Hey, it's Lawrence here from High Intensity Business. Before we get into today's episode, there's just a couple of things you should know. This episode is packed with gold and practically everything you need to know to develop a better understanding about Imagine Strength and their fantastic looking machines to enable you to make a more informed decision on buying equipment. However, it does take Clay and I a few minutes to really get warmed up, and so I ask you to be patient because there's a lot of good stuff revealed as we get further into the conversation. Clay likes to go on some really interesting tangents. I will say, however, that this episode did not flow as smoothly as we hoped. And if you just want to get the quick takeaways, I'd encourage you to visit the blog post over at highintensitybusiness.com. Just search for episode 372, just the number in the search bar, and it will pop right up. My team have used a transcript for this episode to create an organized article to make it easier to read and to find exactly what you're looking for over on the blog post for this episode 372. Now, without any further ado, please enjoy episode 372, Imagine Strength Equipment, the new hit revolution with Clay Steffi. Lawrence Sneal here, and welcome back to High Intensity Business, the podcast where we discuss high intensity strength training and provide you with the tools, the tactics, and the strategies to help you grow your strength training business. This is episode 372, and this episode is all about Imagine Strength, a really exciting company manufacturing machines, exercise machines in Washington. For the show notes for this podcast, please go to highintensitybusiness.com, search for episode 372. Today's guest to talk about Imagine Strength is Clay Steffi, and Clay joins me for the third time on the podcast. We'll talk about what's happening at this business. We're going to be talking about all the machines, strategy, try and cover as much ground as we can in the next 1 hour and 10 minutes or so. So, Clay, do you want to just open up by just giving a bit of more of an introduction as to what Imagine Strength is exactly?
Well, I originally designed a major percentage of the Med-X machines after working at Nautilus for a number of years, and helped Arthur Jones start up Med-X. And I was at Med-X for 11 years and designed, or participated in the design of the medical machines and the exercise-only machines. And they were all very expensive to manufacture. And here this past year or so, I have partnered with a gentleman out on the West Coast, Jeff Turner, who was a salesman for Nautilus back in the day when Arthur still owned Nautilus. And what we wanted to do was try to redesign the Med-X line of equipment for improved function, improved manufacturability, and lower cost, which we have succeeded at doing and are in the process of starting the business up and actually delivering equipment to customers. So that's it in a nutshell, I guess.
Awesome. Yeah. Super excited to talk about this with you. And, during our last podcast together, we did talk a little bit about the differences with the Imagine Strength machines versus, say, Med-X or other machines that people might be familiar with. And one of those differences, and you can correct me if I explain this incorrectly, but just so we don't cover too much of the same ground, there's a difference in weight, the weight stroke distance, right? So rather than being a 12-inch distance, which it would be on Med-X, it's 18 inches, which means that it's less expensive to manufacture because there's less steel and less materials, I suppose. And it's your opinion that that small change in momentum is still incredibly safe so long as the user is using correct form and being coached appropriately. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Could you? Thank you. And
you want me to elaborate on that?
Yes, please, because I do want to make this complete. And I don't actually, I'm going to contradict myself, but I don't mind if we do repeat a little bit of the last episode, because I want this to be all about Imagine Strength. So yeah, please go on. Please elaborate.
Well, Arthur was obsessed. Well, I shouldn't say obsessed, but he was demanding that in a fashion that he wanted the best that he could get out of the machines. And he was concerned with momentum, in that if people throw the weight, they are exposing themselves to excessive force. That's how you create injuries. The medical machines were really extreme. I mean, the lumbar machine had a 4-inch stroke, an 800-pound stack. And so you didn't build up much momentum with that machine. Of course, the problem is you got 800 pounds of steel in just the weight stack alone.
Is that the medical lumbar you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because the exercise one has nowhere near that, does it? I don't think.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's got 12-inch stroke.
Right.
So to have the same output, it would only need 1/3 as much weight. And I don't remember off the top. The Med-X machines, you had a choice of 300, 400, 500, or 600-pound weight stacks. The only place that you needed that much weight, and it was generally because so many people used the machine incorrectly, was the Med-X leg press. You had a few monsters around that could stack both sides, I guess. But they were really using the machine incorrectly when they did that. And of course, people are prone to use the machines incorrectly if you let them, because it's a psychological thing with most people who lift weights, is they want to demonstrate strength instead of actually increasing strength. That's like football players, a lot of football teams, coaches will measure your strength by seeing how much you can bench. Well, that's the best tool that they have or had for, testing people's strength. And so folks who were wanting to be able to produce a really heavy bench press would train for trying to do 1 rep max. But the problem with 1 rep max is it's very dangerous, because it's exposing your tissue, bone, and muscles to maximum stress, and that's where you get injured. If you want to increase strength, you want to stimulate muscle growth. And, Arthur was aware of all this at the time. And hopefully the general population of people who train are in general more aware of this. But the tendency is always there for folks to push the limit. It's like in this country, if a little bit is better, if a little bit is good, more is better. That's the thinking. If a little bit of food is good, more food is better, whatever. But that's not true for exercise. because if you follow that path, you will basically literally prevent your body from getting stronger, because you will overtrain to the point where the body doesn't have sufficient recovery time to recover from the training and or build tissue. So you got to be aware of all these things in order to use the tools properly.
I completely agree. And my just so you're aware, Clay, like you might already be aware, my audience, are all absolutely obsessed with high intensity training. Have followed Arthur Jones and Nautilus and Med-X for decades, and so they are very supportive of what you said. Just to get back to what you were saying there regarding the leg press, you said that it's often used incorrectly if people are using full stack. Is that because? Remind me, did you design the original Med-X leg press, the Selectorized? Did you help design that?
Yes.
Wow. So how is it intended to be used? Are you referring to the way it should be gapped? But go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. How should it be used?
Well, first of all, it is a compound exercise as opposed to a rotary form exercise. A rotary form exercise is a single axis exercise, like a bicep curl. Mm-hmm. You put your elbow on a pad and you rotate your forearm around the elbow axis, basically. That's single axis rotary form exercise. A leg press or an overhead press or a chest press are compound movements where they involve more than one joint and more than one muscle or muscle group. So with the leg press, you are rotating around the hip axis, the knee axis, and to some extent the ankle. And you are basically taking your leg from a bent position to straight. And the thing is when you approach the straight position, you get, theoretically, infinitely strong, because rotation around the hip and the knee and the ankle is producing very little in the way of actually lifting a weight. And you're not performing work if you're not lifting the weight. And so what happens is, people will get on the machine and keep plugging in more and more weight as long as they can barely struggle to get it up and lock their legs. And it's not good for the joints because it puts too much force on the joints, on the skeletal system. And it's very unproductive. It doesn't do anything because at that point, the muscle's really not working very hard because there's very little rotation and practically zero movement on the weight stack. So if you want to perform a leg press correctly, you pin the stack. So you limit how far you can straighten the leg. And you generally want to prevent the last 30 degrees of rotation around the hip.
Okay.
And so you go from a position where your knees are practically against your chest and then push out until your legs are about 30 degrees for full, away from full rotation. And at that point, you can't rest because you're having to exert muscular force in order to keep your knees from coming back against your chest. Whereas if you could lock your legs, you can sit there, knit a sweater while you're holding the weight up. And it does absolutely nothing as far as producing results. So if you want to stimulate growth of a muscle, you've got to expose it to resistance in as efficient a manner as possible, as safely as possible. And the only way to do that is make sure that the muscle is under constant strain.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was super interesting. So just getting back to the Imagine machines, we talked about one of the key changes and the reason behind that change in terms of the distance of the weight stroke. What are some other features that are different about the Imagine machines, and why did you decide to change those things?
Well, one of the things is the Med-X machines required a lot of welding because they were basically cut and paste. Everything had to be cut or miter cut and then welded together, whereas we've gone to a lot more bent structural tubing and also gone away from rectangular tubing to flat oval, which aesthetically is, dresses the machine up a bit. We also have a patented gearing on some of the machines that gives you a moving axis of rotation. Give an example of knee joint. A lot of people complain about discomfort when they do a leg extension, for instance. And, I don't know why they experience discomfort, but if you provide a moving axis, it doesn't have to move far, but it's because the knee joint is not a conventional joint, I guess. It's a sliding joint. It's not it's not like a wheel on an axle. You don't have an axle and a wheel rotating around it. You've got two surfaces, mating surfaces that slide, and they are not perfectly circular. So therefore, you are not rotating your ankle around a fixed point. So if you allow the axis of the machine to move, then you eliminate discomfort for a lot of folks that use the machines. A real classic example of that is the low back machine. We did the medical low back at Med-X, but I was never really happy with it because we did a number of prototypes and we futzed around moving the axis of rotation of the work arm, several different positions, and picked the one that seemed to work for the majority of test subjects. And I lucked out. I was one of the people who was not in that majority. So the Med-X machine was never felt quite right to me. And I felt for a long time that, why is that? Well, your spine is a series of mated vertebrae, and each vertebrae has the ability to rotate with respect to the adjacent vertebrae. So trying to determine a universal axis of rotation that works for everybody when you have an almost infinite possibility, kind of a nightmare. And that bothered me for 30 years. And I finally, on the Exervotics machines, I finally came up with a simple solution for that, where I actually had a work arm that had two pivot points. One was floating and one was fixed. And the floating axis enabled the work arm to accommodate those differences of rotation axis incurred by having multiple vertebrae. And so we've incorporated that on several machines. Some of the machines don't really need it. Some of it, it's like leg extension. We've got a device on the leg extension machine that provides a moving axis. But leg extension never bothered me, so I never really thought about it much. But the back machine bothered me, and incorporated. And of course, the abdominal machine is basically the mirror image of the back machine. So we incorporated the same system into the abdominal machine. And so the abdominal machine will accommodate the same problem that you have with the back machine. Mm-hmm. And of course, with compound exercises like a press movement, leg press, overhead press, chest press, you don't have that problem. At least you got other problems, but like I say, with the like the leg press, tendency of people to not do the exercise correctly. But any compound movement, legs or arms, leg press, chest press, row, whatever, where you involve more than one axis of rotation of a body part, you should avoid locking out. Typically people will do an overhead press, say they'll just push up and lock their elbows and then unlock their elbows, lower the weight, and push up again, lock their elbows. What you should do is go up until your elbows are about 30 degrees shy of locking out, and don't go any further. And that way, when you lock your elbows, you're actually resting. Gives your muscles time to recover a little bit. And for maximum efficiency, you don't want any rest.
What about with the chest press? So I know that some people will, when using the Med-X chest press, they will lock out at the elbow at the end of the range of motion because the shoulders and chest are still being involved. How do you feel about that? Would you still suggest people do not lock out at the end of the chest press?
I would not. I wouldn't lock out any exercise because, for one thing, it's more dangerous because it's loading your joints up, and you've got other exercises that you can work the shoulders better than you can with a chest press. What do you call it when you
lateral raise or
elbows together? Right? Well, lateral raise is a good example, also. Because you don't ever lock out with a lateral raise or I can't remember the name of the machines now, but the one where you bring your elbows together in front of you with your
like a arm cross or a pec deck.
Yes, exactly.
For the chest.
You don't. That's a rotary form exercise, and it works the chest and the shoulders. doesn't work your arms much other than holding the position of your forearms, but you don't have a lockout position, so you don't have to worry about it.
Okay. Question on the lumbar. So when I'm looking at the website, I'm seeing images that look very similar to the original Med-X exercise lumbar, but then you've also got one which has the leg restraints and it has this kind of roller pad that's higher up. Which one of these has the floating axis of rotation, or am I misunderstanding that somewhere? Get a bit confused. There seems to be two lumbar.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
They are both candidates for the floating axis.
I see.
But I'd have to go back and check. I don't remember. When I sent these designs to Jeff, the earlier designs did not have that function. And I modified them and added that and sent them to Jeff. And some of them got that incorporated, and some of them may still be in process.
Got it. So it's probably worth saying at this point, lots of what Clay and I are going to be talking about today is going to be linked up in the show notes. So there'll be links to the website. So good for probably the listeners to look at that when they're listening in order to understand what we're talking about. As unfortunately, there's no video on this one. But one thing I wanted to mention is you talked about leg extension. You talked about the biomechanics of the knee joint, which you explained really, really well. And if listeners want to go deeper on that, there's a really good book. It's called the Body by Science Question and Answer book by Dr. Doug McGuff and John Little. And they talk about the knee function in a bit more detail there as well. So I think that's really good reading to help us all understand, how the knee works and obviously help our clients more effectively, because it's that we've got a hammer strength leg extension, the one that enables you to do unilateral movement, and that does bother some people. It's not for everyone. It bothers me a little bit actually in my left knee. So I love the idea of a floating axis of rotation, and I would love to feel what that's like. So what other changes are there that you can speak about? You talked about this floating axis of rotation on various machines and how it's, some machines it's probably not necessary. But what other changes have you made, Clay, that come to mind for you on these new machines?
Well, we went over the change in the weight stack, and that served. Main purpose was to reduce the cost because you're not putting so much steel in the machine. So the 400-pound stack on an 18-inch stroke is equivalent to a 600-pound stack on a 12-inch stroke. So right off the bat, you save 200 pounds of steel, which reduces the cost and makes it it won't crush your toes quite as flat as the heavier machine will if you drop it on your toe when you're trying to move.
Easier to move around. Yeah, great point. I did have. I know it's. I'm putting you on the spot, so I did have some specific questions looking at the machines. What I noticed is with the seated row, you've got two grips. So you've got like a horizontal grip and a vertical grip. Whereas the original Med-X seated row just has the one, well, at least the one we have the fused one where it's bilateral, it's not unilateral. And it's got a curved handle, but it's just the one grip position, I believe. Maybe I haven't messed around with it enough to know, but I'm just curious, what was the logic behind having the two different grips on the row, the vertical and the horizontal? Is that just for some variety or any other reason?
Mainly for variety. It's like myself, when I broke my neck, at the same time I shattered my right forearm. And it's easier for me to grip vertically than it is for me to rotate my fist. So folks who have shattered forearms will have an easier time on that machine than others. So enables you. Let me back up a minute. One of the things that you need to be concerned about is what I call habituation, where you get so used to the exercise that it's a habit. And if you want to stimulate the body, then you need to change something. And sometimes as slight a change as rotating the wrists will give you that change that you need for further growth stimulation. So you need a little bit of variety. And I don't know how many machines we're going to end up with in the line. There'll probably be 25 machines or so.
Beautiful.
And you certainly wouldn't want to do a workout where you used all 25 machines. Because if you used them all properly, you'd probably have a heart attack. You probably only need to use 10 or 12 different exercises. The quantity is not what you are trying to do. You're trying to do quality of exercise, which means training to momentary failure. And you want to do that as safely and efficiently as possible. That was, Arthur was big on safety and efficiency and not overtraining, because one of the things that you find over the years, if you use this equipment or train with barbells for that matter, the stronger you get, everybody has a potential for growth. Now, my potential is not, regardless of how hard I train, I will never look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, it helps if you have Mr. and Mrs. Schwarzenegger Sr. as your parents, as opposed to who your parents were. Not everybody has that kind of potential. You want to try to train for whatever your potential is, whatever it happens to be, and everybody's potential is different. And you got different potential for muscle growth in your lower body than you do in your upper body. So you have to, use a little bit of common sense. Of course, it's called common sense. It's not really that common. People do crazy things in gyms. They do crazy things with barbells. They do insane things with some of the exercises that do where they're literally throwing the weight or throwing their bodies, whatever, and exposing their joints and muscles to extreme forces, and in the process getting injured. And if you do it weight training properly or resistance training properly, you shouldn't ever get injured. You shouldn't ever get hurt. Going to get sore.
That's it. I just realized, Clay, that I did make a mistake. I'm looking at the website and I mistaked the abdominal for the lumbar because it had those same leg restraints as the lumbar did.
They use a lot of the same parts. They look almost identical.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So now so that was so that's very clear to me now as to which one's which. Go ahead. Sorry.
They're the reverse of each other. The abdominal exercise is the antithesis of the lumbar exercise. The lumbar exercise, you're rotating your shoulders back and in the process articulating the spine. And in the abdominal exercise, you're contracting the abdominal muscles. You're bringing the sternum closer to the to the
hips,
the the to your belly button, basically, and but the spine is pretty much articulating through the same path in either exercise. You just resistance is one direction on one machine, it's in the opposite direction on the other. So they're basically mirror images of each other.
And I'm looking at some of these images right now, and they look really economical in terms of floor space consumption, which I'm guessing was very deliberate in terms of making these as economical as possible for the customer. So is that another consideration that's gone into this? Have you been able to save room on floor space? Yeah.
It's always a consideration, you know. I mean, of course, you have to know who your customer is. You got so many gyms out there that are, $10 a month and, whatever. And they got 9,000 different machines, and they got X machines from this company and Y machines from this other company. And you got to know who your customer is. The big gym owners like that, they're interested in just having as many people as possible paying a monthly fee, having a membership. The emphasis is not on training efficiency. It's just pumping as many people through as you possibly can. Whereas these machines, you're trying to create a tool that, if used correctly, will enable people to have good results, good outcomes, and less risk of injury or what have you. And so floor space is a consideration, but it's not at the top of the list.
So, okay, so this actually leads me into another question. Actually, before I get there, let me just backtrack. I just want to cover off something about the specific machines or an observation I made. So I noticed also another thing looks like you've changed is on the overhead press, you no longer have the rear handle, and you just have the, again, vertical, horizontal handle at the front. And I was wondering, is that because of potential shoulder impingement issues where the hands are too far back and, out of the peripheral vision? Is that why that was removed? I'm just curious about that.
That's on the overhead press.
Yeah, so the original one, which I'm guessing you helped design, had the rear handles as well as the front handles. So you had a few choices there, but I never use the rear handles on ours because it just doesn't feel right on my shoulder.
Hang on one second. I don't have all these machines memorized, so I have to.
You're okay.
Pull the thing up on my computer and look at it to see exactly what you're talking about. Overhead press. That's that guy right there. Okay. Let me open this machine.
It's the shoulder press as well, I guess you could call it. I wanted to use the right terminology, Clay. I didn't want to offend you.
Well, there's so many of them, I can't even remember the correct terminology.
On the website, it's just on the photo gallery. It's just called overhead.
I don't have. Wait a minute.
While you're looking for that, I'll just say for the listeners, if you go to imaginestrength.com and you scroll down, there's a photo gallery of, I think, the line as it stands currently, and they just look so good. I mean, they're all painted black. They look so just professional, and they just look like really great machines.
Makes you want to just run right out and buy a bunch of them. Huh?
I absolutely. I would buy a full line if I could, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really excited about the modifications that we talked about. So have you found that yet? If not, don't worry, we can move on.
Actually, no, I haven't found it yet. I don't know why.
Okay, don't worry. We'll park it somewhere. I've got so much more to ask you, Clay, so don't worry.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, so far we've obviously covered some of the modifications you've made, which is really interesting. Can you just briefly talk about the machines that are coming. Off air, you spoke about potentially a rotary torso, which is exciting. What else do you have down the line, and what can we expect? I guess the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
I'm hopefully going to be able to take a little time off.
Sounds like you
actually,
deserve it.
I think the one thing we don't have yet, I haven't got around to doing yet, and it's a pretty easy machine to do, and that's a bicep. I don't have a bicep machine.
That's key.
What?
That's key for the guys, especially.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, who tend to be more interested in bicep curls, generally speaking.
Got machines falling through the cracks.
Okay.
And that's one that, and off the top of my head, I don't know what else is coming down the pipe. We got to get the ball rolling with what we've got right now. And then, based on the feedback that we get from customers, and, that'll probably have a lot to do with what we come up with in the future. The goal right now is to finish out the general line of equipment, and then be able to, see if there are other pieces that might appeal to some individual customers. I don't know. There's so many different exercise machines out there. It's and there are some that there is very little demand for, like, for instance, a hip extension machine. We did at MedX, we did a lay on your side hip extension and a lay on your side torso flexion and a lay on your side leg curl. And those were amongst the first machines that we did, but I don't recall they were ever particularly popular.
Yeah.
So they're, way down on the list of what customers want initially. And, we're like any other company. You're driven by, to a certain extent, by, what people are going to buy. So, and me not being on the sales end, so to speak, I don't really talk to customers much. I'm perfectly happy to talk to anybody, pretty much. I'm open to inquiries or questions or general discussions. Gives me something to do.
Well, let me, just for completeness, I'll just go through the line now, just so everyone's aware of what's on offer. Because I think I've made the assumption that everyone knows what the line is, but just looking at the website, and obviously you can correct me, Clay, as I go. You've got chest press, pullover, compound row, seated leg curl, torso arm, super leg press, lateral raise, leg extension, overhead press, lower back extension, four-way neck, abdominal, rowing back, or some people might call that rear delt, hip adduction, hip abduction for you Americans, and hip abduction for the Brits, I assume. I said abdominal already, haven't I? Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the line currently. Anyway, that's what's on the website and the photo gallery. So I think that's a really nice starting point for a lot of studio owners.
Well, there's enough machines that I personally don't have memorized, so I couldn't tell you if that website was complete or not. Okay. I think it's fairly complete. So,
and there's some really nice videos too with demonstrations of the machines. Not demonstrations, sorry, just video footage of the machines. Yeah. Next question I had for you, Clay, and this is something that listener requested, is what systems will you have in place to seamlessly manage replacement parts And will you maintain an inventory, or will you fabricate things to order? How's that going to work?
Well, there are certain things that you need to keep in stock, like upholstery. I don't know if anybody's ever really come up with a good solution for upholstery. Upholstery wears out. The foam gets crushed over time, and you have to have cushions. I mean, if you just put a board like on a leg press, you sat on a board and leaned back against a board, and you had two boards coming down on top of your shoulders.
Not cozy.
People wouldn't be too happy with that machine. So, upholstery, you have to, and you either have to maintain a certain amount of stock. Well, in general, what most companies have done is they have a standard choice of colors for paint and also for upholstery, and an upcharge if you want a custom color for upholstery or paint. And you have a limited amount of space for keeping a lot of different colors in stock. Right now, we don't have. I know this is something that Jeff is working on. He has a guy that does his upholstery, and so if somebody wanted to get new upholstery, replace a pad or something, they say, okay, I need a leg press back pad. Okay, what color? Green, whatever the standard color is. I don't know. So that's a relatively short turnaround, even if they have to, build the pad basically from scratch. I mean, there's certain things you can stock. You can stock the foam and the board that the upholstery is attached to, that the foam is attached to, whatever, because those don't come in different colors. Depends on how your upholstery is made. The upholstery we use is similar to the Medex upholstery.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a plastic backboard, and you got plywood inside, and you got T-nuts and bolts and foam, and different types of foam depending on the application. Well, those are, and of course, the plastic back is black. So you can stock all that, or your upholstery guy that you sub that out to, they can stock all that. And of course, they're going to stock the standard colors of upholstery. Now, things like bolts and nuts, those are basically hardware store items. So, a half-inch hex nut that's 2 inches long, well, you can get that at Lowe's or the hardware store, whatever. If you wanted to get it from the manufacturer of the equipment, it wouldn't make sense because it would be a lot cheaper.
Yeah,
just to go to Lowe's,
just source it locally. Yeah, those bits,
and things like end caps for that go into the tubing to close off the end of the tubing. That would be something that we would stock, because there's only a few different sizes of end caps that we use. We try to standardize as much as possible throughout the design. And those are something that are not generally available at Lowe's or someplace like that. So you'd want to stock those. So it depends on, what the particular items are. And, if you wanted to replace the whole work arm on a machine, then that would take a little longer because we stock machines, don't stock
Parts.
individual parts like that, big, what I called weldments. So
they'd have to be, because everything's manufactured in, is it Asia?
Well,
Whereabouts in Asia?
yeah, if you look at the hammer strength model for manufacturing, Gary Jones was very clever in the way he set up his manufacturing. He had one end of the factory, they delivered raw materials, and the raw materials came in on one end of the factory, and they went through. First thing they went through was through a metal saw, because you got to cut your tubing to length, or your flat stock or round stock, whatever it is, you got to cut it to length. Then you go through machine shop where they perform, drill holes or put in E-clip grooves or what have you, that sort of thing. Then they continue down the line and they'll go into welding. And in the welding shop, they take they do the welded assemblies, and then they part of that is another section of the factory where they do all the bending for bent parts. And then right in the middle of the factory, he had what he called black storage, and basically that's where he stored all the manufactured parts that had not been painted yet. So he'd have, 15 or 20 seat frames for overhead press, or 15 or 20 work arms for overhead press. They'd be stored in bays. And then when he got an order for a piece of equipment, you'd go out and you would pick the parts, the weldments, out of the storage bays and transport them over and hang them on the paint line and run them through the paint so that you could paint them the color that the customer had ordered. And then they went through a drying process in the oven, and then they come out into the assembly area, and the people who are assembling machines take them off the hooks and completely assemble the machine, including all the bolts and nuts, and
it's very efficient,
and upholstery and everything.
And is that how you're operating? So I just want to get back to the original point, Clay, because I appreciate the story about Hammer, but I know that my listeners are really interested in, if I buy these machines, what kind of support am I going to get in terms of replacement parts and maintain and inventory and things like that, which you've covered to an extent. But one of the things we were getting at there is, if someone needs a big part, like the movement arm you mentioned, that would have to be manufactured in Asia. Am I correct? And then shipped over.
Right now, that would have to be manufactured in China and shipped over.
China, right? Yeah. Okay. And then what happens? You have all the parts shipped over, and then you actually assemble in Washington, or is that correct?
No, the machines are basically what they do in China is they assemble the machine completely and kick the tires and slam the doors, get on the machine, make sure everything's functioning properly. And then they partially disassemble it and put them in crates. Put the crates on a pallet. And fasten them to the pallet. And then they go into a container. The container goes into a container ship, and they ship them over to this country. And they take the container, and I don't know exactly what Jeff has in mind, but I would think he was probably, have the machines uh, short term in a warehouse and then put them on the back of a truck, still in the boxes, and then take them to the customer, and then have delivery guys take them out of the box and assemble them at the customer site.
That sounds like the most efficient way to do it, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know any other way to do it.
This is the thing, right? Well, the way I understand it is it's just a lot less expensive to manufacture this stuff in China, right? I know that
Yes.
a lot of people listening to this would want it to be American made and all of that, but that's incredibly expensive, right? That's why you're going down this route for now, at least.
Yeah, not
in
only
order to
that,
make
but
it.
it
Go ahead.
costs a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So what about okay, so I think you answered that fairly well in terms of giving us an understanding of, if we needed parts, how it kind of works. You mentioned there obviously a lot of the smaller nuts and bolts can be sort of acquired from any hardware store locally. What about long-term maintenance? So is there what's your recommendation in terms, someone buys these machines, what should they be doing from a maintenance perspective to keep them working, appropriately, in your opinion?
Well, that started way back in the Nautilus days, as far as telling people how to maintain the machines. The primary things is keep them clean. You want to wipe them down at the end of the day, just, because they're going to get sweat, and sweat is salt water, and salt water is corrosive. And if you have, scratches in the paint, you want to touch those up. One of the problems that started initially back in the days of Nautilus people would over lube the machines, like the flange bearings, pillow block bearings. They got a little Zerk fitting on them that you hook up with a grease gun, and they would just grease the piss out of them, and you'd have a pile of grease underneath the machine, hidden by the shields or whatever. Those bearings are made, they come pre-lubed. They already got grease in them, and they are designed to operate in conditions where they are rotating, 2,000 or 3,000 RPM. Okay. And it's the same bearing that we use on the exercise machine is designed for up to 2,000 or 3,000 RPM. And at most, we're getting, you'd have to really work hard, move the work arm as fast as possible to get those bearings up to 10 RPM. So you should never have to grease a bearing. They should just last for the life of the machine. And if they ever, started squeaking or something, sure, give them a shot of grease, but people tend to over grease them. And you want to keep, these machines don't have conventional guide rods on the weight stacks, but you do have a selector rod that runs down the center of the plates that you select the different number of plates, and those, the selector rod should just be wiped down once every 6 or 8 weeks or 6 months or whatever, depending on what the environment is. If you got a clean environment, relatively speaking, take good care of your facility, keep the rugs vacuumed and the floor swept and so on and so forth. The machines should require very, very little in the way of maintenance. But of course, as I say, you do have some items that are going to be more subject to wear, and that's primarily upholstery. And
Yeah, just going back on upholstery, sorry, you did say about how it's important to find someone locally who can potentially stock replacement upholstery and the colors you desire. But how do you go about sourcing that? So let's say, for example, I guess you buy an Imagine Strength machine or line of machines. Would you provide upholstery that the subcontractor could store, or how would we source that exactly?
Well, I don't know if Jeff has got that all worked out or not.
Okay.
The way that I would do it would be to have the manufacturer over in China use the same upholstery that is available in this country, so that of course we could probably get rolls of upholstery from China. Problem is we ain't big enough to be able to afford to do that yet.
Yeah, of course.
If we were delivering 10,000 machines a year, we'd probably be big enough to do that. But right now, we ain't that big.
Yeah, you'll get there. No, I'm really. It's really pleasing to hear how easy these are to maintain, because that's like my biggest weakness is looking after machines or building machines or modifying machines. It's just not something I know much about, have any skill doing, and have any interest, to be totally honest. And so to know that they're quite easy to maintain, you just follow some of the guidelines you provided just now is reassuring. So moving on, Clay, unless there's anything else you want to add on the maintenance side of things, anything else you think is important to mention there?
Well, that's going to vary a lot customer to customer, because some customers would take the machine down to their garage at home and paint it themselves. But in general, that's not the case. In general, folks want to just put the machine in their facility and then stand back and let people use it. And, hopefully it lasts forever, but it's not going to last forever. And the basic components of the machine should lasts for a really long time. But like I say, there are parts of the machine, like the upholstery, that will wear and do require replacement.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like anything else. Technology improves. If we come out with a better quality foam and a better quality upholstery, then it will last longer. But again, the primary thing that you want to concern yourself with is, if you purchase these machines, is keep them clean, especially like on the leg press, for instance. You got those rods that the seat slides back and forth on, and you got the rods that the shoulder pads move up and down the back pad. It's you need to keep those wiped down. If you got a relatively clean environment, you shouldn't have to do that very often, once a month or something.
Yeah.
Have to keep an eye on them and don't let them get all covered with dirt.
Yeah. Great advice. And let's talk a little bit about pricing and lead time. So starting with lead times, if someone ordered a line today, what can they expect in terms of a lead time? I know that it's early days, you're still working things out, but I just want to maybe set some expectation. Have you got any view on lead times for, let's say, a big 5 setup or a line of 10 machines or something like that to the US?
Right now, based on what I know, I would say lead time is going to be 2 to 3 months. Because you always have that time on the water. If you're shipping from Asia, You got to build them in the factory, which takes, generally probably build them all in a week or two. But then you got to package them and ship them to a port, put them on a boat. Boat's got to come across the Pacific, offload. Then you got to take them to a distribution center, and from there deliver them to the customer. So the delivery time is probably the biggest factor.
Yes.
They can build them pretty quick, but it's getting them all the way over here and then distributing them. And it depends on where you are in the United States. Right now, if you live in Washington State, you probably get them pretty quick because that's where Jeff is. But if you live in Florida, where I am, it's going to take a bit longer.
That's right. What about, and I'm guessing you are going to be shipping globally at some point. If I wanted them shipped to Ireland, is that an option? And then we just have someone, arrange for someone to deliver it from the port to location and have one of our own people build it. Is that a possibility?
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, was that a yes?
That's a yes. I mean,
great. I was just double checking.
I don't see a problem with it. We would probably want to have set up like a European distributor.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to fly to Europe in order to assemble a bunch of machines and then fly back. So what you'd have is have a European distributor. And of course, initially that's going to be a difficulty to overcome because if you want a European distributor, you got to have, personnel. You got to either send somebody over there to train them how to assemble machines or bring them over here and train them. Once they're trained on assembly and maintenance of the machines, then, you just ship the machine to, as you say, either Ireland or Great Britain or France or wherever.
Yeah.
And I would say you probably need a general European distributor. I don't know. It's like Medex. We had Kieser in Germany.
That's right.
And initially, Arthur gave him the rights to manufacture the exercise equipment, but he didn't manufacture the medical equipment. But after Arthur sold Medex, and somewhere several years after he sold Medex, whoever was in charge of Medex at that time gave him or licensed him to manufacture the medical machines in Germany. So, basically that's Medex Germany, and they're completely independent from Medex USA. I don't know.
What about pricing, Clay? Can we talk a little bit about that? Can you give us a ballpark on, what these machines cost?
Somewhere.
Gotta find that file.
I have, everything that I got is, and I don't have I got a list, but it's not complete.
That's okay. Just to give us an idea of the difference in cost, because that's one of the great things, right? Is that they are slightly less expensive than the Medex, which made that very difficult for people to acquire them. Sorry.
Well, this is a thing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They got, we have, this is an older list, so I don't know if it's current, but
if you're not comfortable with it, then people can. Go ahead.
I can give it to you. There's no problem. Like a leg press is listed for $4,950 US dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Chest press, $3,950 US dollars. And they're generally range from, what's the cheapest on here? About $39.50 is probably the cheapest, and most expensive one I see out of the 12 is $49.50. So that's retail cost. And for delivery to Europe, it'll probably be different, but I don't know how much different. These are U.S. prices, and as I say, they are not current. I don't know if these were. I don't know how accurate these were. These are originally. And they don't. These don't include shipping costs.
Okay. They're really reasonable. Very, very affordable compared to alternatives. So no, that's really great to hear that. And do you have any recommendations? I had one question from a listener who said, if I'm just starting my business, what machine should I acquire? Do you have any advice on what number of machines a new studio should look to buy? I don't know if that's a really subjective question, because obviously it depends on budget and things like that. But what's your take on that?
Like you say, there's a lot of factors that go into making that choice, and it depends on what kind of clientele you're servicing. Mm-hmm. For instance, if you were a sports club and you had a bunch of athletes and you were trying to train them, then you might have one set of machines. And if you were a club owner, workout facility, whatever, for the general population, it might be a little bit different, but a lot of overlap. So I don't know what the minimum, generally, the way I was brought up, so to speak, was you pick 8 to 12 exercises, which would probably require 8 to 12 machines, and then base your workout around that. But a facility would probably want more than just 12 machines. I don't even know how many different designs we got right now. 15.
So what Clay's basically saying is you should just buy the full line and be done with it.
Well, of course.
I don't blame you.
Because, again, it goes back to habituation. If you use the same equipment every time and use it in the same way every time, you do have to worry about habituation. So if you can change the way an exercise is performed or do a different but related exercise, then you can stimulate a better response. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what to tell you. Just
I think
people want to have different preferences.
Yeah, you make a really good couple points there, and I think a better question might be, how do you select the right machines for your business? And that there should be a few filters that every business owner goes through in order to make that decision. I think quite often what happens is someone starts a business, they're passionate, and they just buy machines that they want. They don't really think through, what's going to be the best fit for their target market. They don't perhaps set an intelligent budget around that, and maybe think about floor space and things like that. So there are a few questions that precede that. Clay, thank you so much for your time again. And we've reached the end point here. So anyone who's interested in, obviously, Imagine Strength machines, please go to imaginestrength.com, and there's an opt-in for your email so you can get updates on the business and what's happening with the machines. And there's loads of information there on on the machines and some really nice pictures and videos. And there's Jeff's contact details there, Jeff Turner. His phone number and email address is there as well, should you want more information. Clay, is there any parting thoughts, or did you want to leave any of your own contact details as well if listeners want to get in touch with you and perhaps they've got specific questions around specifically design and engineering and that kind of thing?
ClaySteffi@gmail.com.
Beautiful. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much.
One word,
Go ahead.
Yeah. So Clay Steffi, one word, ClaySteffe
Perfect.
@gmail.com. Yeah.
I shall get that added to the blog post. So, and to find the blog post for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com, search for episode 372. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.